September 8, 2025, a storm of war unleashed itself across Ukraine's eastern front. At 5:15 a.m., the silence along the Donetsk-Luhansk frontier shattered with an overwhelming force. Russia, confident and relentless, launched its most audacious attack to date. 320 drones, 70 tanks, 30 mine-clearing vehicles, and 1,200 elite troops charged into Ukrainian territory. A moment that was supposed to end in Ukraine's destruction. But what Russia didn't anticipate was that this time, Ukraine was prepared. This was no longer the vulnerable Ukraine Russia had encountered at the beginning of the war. The first wave of drones rose, their dark shadows against the dawn signaling Russia's brutal opening. Hundreds of drones surged into the sky, targeting Ukraine's air defenses, seeking to blind radar systems and silence missile batteries. But under the leadership of General Alexander Syrskyi, the Ukrainian forces weren't rushing to meet this force head-on. No, they were waiting. And as Russia pressed forward, unaware of the deadly trap ahead, Ukraine held its breath, preparing for the perfect moment. What was coming next would surprise them all. Russia's ground forces stormed forward, massive mine-clearing vehicles plowing through the terrain. Behind them, a wall of 70 Russian tanks, their guns roaring with intent to decimate. The ground shook under the weight of Russian might. But beneath the earth, the waiting Ukrainian soldiers knew something Russia didn't. Their trap was set. The carefully laid minefield, capable of shattering a Russian column in seconds, was ready. But as fate would have it, the first part of their plan went horribly wrong. As the Russian tanks and armored vehicles barreled forward, the minefield triggered too soon. The crushing weight of a mine-clearing vehicle set off the explosives prematurely, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. The explosions tore apart 14 Russian vehicles in an instant, but Ukraine's carefully planned ambush had been spent too early. Chaos erupted among Ukrainian ranks. Panic rippled through the lines. Was it over? Was the Russian advance unstoppable now? But General Syrskyi stayed calm, unshaken by the loss of the minefield's full potential. He knew the battle was far from lost. Syrski's voice was steady, rallying his men. "We hold the line. Let them think we are finished. Then we strike where they least expect it." And so the Ukrainian forces waited. Then, without warning, Ukraine's hidden weapon was unleashed. 200 specialized drones took to the sky, each one designed to entangle Russian UAVs mid-flight. The battlefield transformed into a chaotic aerial hunt. Russian drones, desperate to continue their assault, clashed with the Ukrainian net drones. Over 70 Russian UAVs fell from the sky, tangled in the reinforced nets. But Russia wasn't backing down. The battle above intensified. Russian operators pushed their remaining drones forward with desperation, trying to blind radars and break the defensive lines. The clash between Ukrainian and Russian drones became a deadly dance of fire and steel. But as Russia's remaining UAVs dropped, Ukrainian forces didn't stop. From the ground, Gatling guns roared to life, spinning at blistering speeds, cutting down Russian drones one by one. Yet 3 drones still managed to slip through, smashing into a Ukrainian forward base. The explosions sent supply trucks ablaze. Even small breaches could cause devastating losses. But Ukraine fought back with overwhelming force. 250 kamikaze drones, 100 bomb-dropping UAVs, each one programmed to dive onto Russian armor, launched in waves. The first strike alone obliterated 27 Russian tanks, their turrets flying into the air like tin cans. Panic spread through Russian infantry as explosions ripped through their ranks. The battlefield became a symphony of destruction. By 6:10 a.m., nearly 40% of Russia's frontline armor had been reduced to burning wrecks. What Russia had hoped would be a breakthrough had become their worst nightmare. The Russian assault was collapsing. But there was no time for celebration. General Sirski knew that the battle was far from over. Russia's remaining forces, though battered, would resist to the last round. The Ukrainian tanks, positioned in the cover of the forest flanks, now emerged. T-64 and T-72 tanks, upgraded with modern NATO optics, rolled into battle with a single purpose: to wipe out what remained of the Russian advance. And they did just that. In just 7 minutes of shelling, 19 Russian tanks were destroyed, their wrecks scattered across the battlefield. Russia's remaining forces scrambled, firing wildly into the forests, hoping to turn the tide. But it was futile. Ukrainian tanks, firing from covered positions, fired with deadly precision, picking off tank after tank. Russian infantry, once so confident, now faced annihilation. The battlefield was a chaotic mess of burning wreckage, shattered morale, and soldiers fleeing for their lives. Over 400 Russian soldiers were killed or incapacitated in just 1 hour. And still, Russia tried to fight back. Small groups of Russian soldiers, cornered in farmhouses and tree lines, continued their resistance. But Ukraine's precision strikes were unrelenting. Drones dove in to obliterate their hiding spots. Even those who managed to escape the drone strikes were hunted down by Ukrainian soldiers on fast-moving all-terrain motorcycles. Within minutes, the last pockets of Russian resistance were eradicated. By noon, over 300 Russian soldiers had surrendered, their weapons scattered in the dirt. Ukraine had completely turned the tide. As the smoke cleared, Russia's once proud assault had been reduced to rubble. 70 tanks, over 800 soldiers, and countless drones lay destroyed or abandoned. Ukraine's losses, though painful, were minimal in comparison. Fewer than 20 soldiers had been killed, and only 5 critically wounded. What Moscow had envisioned as a swift victory had turned into a humiliating defeat. General Sirski's plan had worked. Against all odds, Ukraine had survived, adapted, and emerged victorious. The lesson was clear. In modern warfare, numbers alone don't guarantee victory. Leadership, strategy, and the ability to adapt were the true keys to success. For Russia, September 8, 2025, would be remembered as a day of utter failure. For Ukraine, it was proof that with creativity, technology, and willpower, even the most formidable forces could be defeated.